going to fingerprint him.
Yeah. I don't know. They made a lot of decisions that weren't very wise. To be the wisest of the so-called wise.
Supposed to be.
Supposed to be. Supposedly. I like to say that word wrong, supposab, instead of supposedly, just to annoy people. And they added a new word to the dictionary this year, irregardless, because the word is regardless, but people said irregardless for so long they just went ahead and added it to.
Would that be IRR?
It would be IRR.
Is it IRR?
The wrong way, yeah, it would be IRR. It's not like EAR, regardless. Ear. Regardless.
Is it I or E?
It's I.
Is it I?
Mm-hmm. I think. Don't get me lying.
No.
All right. Let's rock and roll.
Got to use your common sense on these things.
You're obviously not using it.
I forgot to use my common sense. But next week, Gerald will be last week. He's going to do Isaiah 6. But I'm going to be here. I said, I'm going to say yay or nay on what you're saying. I just want to be here and be a part of it.
You're talking about life group for next week? Oh, okay. I didn't know what. I heard the intro music was playing, and then you started talking. I didn't know what you were talking about.
Yeah, so. He wanted to do it. So
yeah, it's good.
Rock on.
Yeah, absolutely. Multiplication is what they say is the way to grow life groups and small groups, not division where you take, whatever. It's multiplication. Anyways, welcome to MZBC, the podcast.
Oh, we're live.
We're live, baby.
Hey.
We're live. MZBC, the podcast for January the 9th, 2022.
It's February. It's February.
February the 9th.
It is, right?
Yeah, it definitely is February because Valentine's
February
Day is
9th.
around the corner. February the 9th, 2022. I've been sick for a week and a half. It's like I don't even know what the day is. Thank you for catching that.
I was like, wait a minute.
Today is, did you know this? Today is National Pizza Day.
No.
What's your favorite pizza?
It varies. Depends on what mood I'm in.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, I mean, are you a pepperoni guy? You an olives?
No, I can. If I built my own, it'd be like some goat cheese.
Okay.
Some mushrooms, and instead of pizza sauce, the red, we use basil. Or pesto, I'm sorry, pesto. And then sprinkle some mozzarella.
You're a little fancy. I did not picture you
But see, here's the difference. We go to the store and buy it and take it home.
Yeah, of course.
We don't go out and order an $80 pizza.
No. Yeah. No. You make it at home?
Yeah, we use stone flatbreads.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you bake it in the oven or, I have I don't have a big green egg. I have the Home Depot version of a big green egg. It's called a acorn.
Komodo or something.
I don't have
Big
the Komodo. No, that's still too fancy also.
Is it? Are those expensive too?
I got the acorn.
I just got old steel
and
smoker.
It's way too expensive if you ask me for a grill. I think it's still too expensive. But you can do pizzas in there, crank the heat up to like 550. Throw it in there. We put it, just like you said, on the stone.
The stone bread?
Put it on there. Man, it's amazing. But
we might not share too much of that. People might want to come over and eat.
Yeah. And I don't want anyone over, so. I wish I had a big enough house to invite people over. I really do.
We should get a shirt each that I just read. It's like, sorry, I'm late because I didn't want to come.
Yeah, I like that shirt. What was the other shirt you said?
It had a baseball player on it,
and
he swung the bat, and it shows him hitting the ball, and it said touchdown. I was like, and I thought of you immediately. I was like, I should wear that for Russell.
Absolutely. Speaking of who you pick for the Super Bowl, can you tell me first of all who's in the Super Bowl?
It's a football team.
It is two of them.
Two of them.
Do you have any idea who they are?
The football team.
There you go. So I'm going to give you two names: the Chiefs or the Bengals. Not the Chiefs. The Bengals or the Rams. Who do you pick?
Let's say I know there's a Bengal Tiger.
There is.
Yeah.
Or the Rams.
Which
one hits you?
Is the Rams the one with the blue and the yellow circle?
Man, you know more than I thought. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I have no idea where they're from, but
L.A.
Right, it's Cincinnati, right?
Boom.
Is the Bengal one.
There you go. Yeah, see, you're perfect. I mean, that's 50% of the answer right there. So you got a pick for the game?
The winning team.
The winning one. I'm gonna go I'm going to go Bengals just because Joe Burrow was LSU quarterback and Matt Stafford for the Rams is the Georgia quarterback, and I'm definitely not picking those guys. I hope they get blown out by 50.
Do you bet on football games?
I don't bet on anything.
You don't bet on?
Mm-mm. You can't bet in Georgia.
You can't?
It's illegal.
Is it?
Yeah. Are you allowed to bet as a Baptist? I'm partly joking because if you ask anyone, they would say, no. What are you talking about? That's God's money. You can't bet with it. And I guess there's people that I will not make my brother stumble. I think is where that would fall under the category of.
That's from 2 weeks ago.
If I stood, yeah, that's from 2 weeks ago.
No, it's 3 weeks because.
Oh, that's right.
Wing Chain did.
If I
last week
stood up and talked about gambling or whatever, someone would say that I was encouraging someone else. So no, I will say this though, I have bet like friendly wagers and stuff before. I've never bet before online and all that because honestly I don't know how you do it, and secondly I don't think you can do it in Georgia. Like the times that I have been curious and just got on the random websites that I hear on the radio and stuff, it says you can't do this from the area you're in. Now, I'm smart enough to know that there are VPNs and virtual private networks that you can pay for and all these things, and you can be in Georgia and your computer may really say that you're in Alaska or wherever it's legal. So you can't do that. I've never done that. You can't do that though. But if I had to bet, honestly, I would probably put money on LA. Joe Burrow is just like the new trend. He's like super popular right now and all these things. But I don't want either one of them to win because one's an LSU Tiger and one's an ex-Georgia Bulldog. So have a hard feeling about both of those. Shout out to David, though.
Sorry, Mr. D.
Sorry, Mr. D. Yeah, I was going to give David a shout out.
He's a Georgia guy, right?
Unfortunately, Mr. D, one of my best friends in the world, is a Georgia guy. And I can't break him of it. He's in all hardcore. What gets me about him is his kids, when they were first born, when they were little babies, I used to get them to be able to say Roll Tide until they got old enough to know that their dad didn't play that. And so now they won't even say. Does
Georgia have a saying? Like Alabama has?
Go Dogs.
Is that it? Go Dogs?
Yeah. They have this cheer that's like, Go Dogs, roof. It's just the worst. Like, it's like, we're just barking like
what would an elephant say?
I have no idea. But anything's when they do a kickoff, when they kick the ball and you don't know the kickoff, but when you kick it, another team runs back. They always do like some thing, and then like when they kick it, they're like sick 'em. It's like it just rubs me the wrong way. I just can't stand it. But I was giving a shout out to my man David.
David. He's a
Auburn Tiger.
Auburn.
And I was going to send out my condolences to him because his basketball team got upset the night before last by the Arkansas Razorbacks. So I'm sure he was a little disappointed. But it was only their second loss of the year, and I think they've beat Alabama more than 2 times this year. So I can't talk too much trash about basketball.
And that's basketball.
Basketball, yeah. Something I don't pay any attention to until March Madness starts next month. And I definitely don't watch any NBA basketball. It's just too much showboating, and I could care less about LeBron James, and it's like everything in basketball has to do with LeBron, so I don't care about any of that stuff. Do you watch the Olympics at all? I'm going to say no.
I have seen some videos popping up on YouTube when I'm scrolling through there.
Yeah. It's such a heartbreaking thing last night. There's this downhill skier.
But see, used to the Olympics was like a worldwide big deal.
Yeah,
but I haven't heard
much about it.
Anything.
Part of the problem this year, it's in China, and so people are like not cool with it being in China, obviously because they're communist and they have just like the government controlled and all this. So they have people groups that they suppress and all this stuff. I mean, you think that America has, people talk about voter suppression and this suppression and the marginalized people and all this stuff. China, like, legitimately has all that kind of stuff going on. Now, you would never know that if you asked their leaders. They would say whatever. But
no, we love everybody as long as they don't make us mad.
I don't think the world, I think especially America, is not trying to make a big deal out of it.
Promote too much.
It kind of sucks for the athletes, though. I mean, they put so much into it their whole life. But I think her name is Michelle the skier. Man, last night, like this, she's like the super great skier, and her father was like her biggest fan and was like the photographer that was always with her and all this stuff. He passed away right before COVID, and so she was having like this, I'm doing this for my dad and all this stuff. And dude, she just like, both the events she was supposed to win, she totally did not do well. And it was just so sad last night because she started, and probably 5 seconds into the downhill part, she like went off the track, didn't even get to finish, and she just sat there and like in disbelief for
So I can't believe it's just
15 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really sad for her. But some of the other Americans, I think, like figure skating, they've been crushing it. But I'm with you though. This year I haven't. I'm usually into the Olympics. Like I kind of like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's all over.
Kind of like it, and it's fun. But America really hasn't. The USA hasn't really done much so far this year. Maybe it gets better as the next week goes on. My wife loves it, and she watches every bit that's on TV. And I've been giving her a hard time, and she does not like me because I'm telling her this is just boring this year. I don't even like it, and partially giving her a hard time, but partially being true because it has been kind of boring. But I do enjoy the Olympics. America is like in 17th right now, though, as far as overall medal count and all this stuff. So we're not doing as good as we typically do, but it'll get better.
USA usually does
tonight.
Top notch, right?
It's probably already happened. I think China, Beijing is 13 hours ahead of us, I think I heard. And so whatever happened today has already happened, and we'll watch it on TV tonight. But I think I saw where Shaun White, you know who, does that name ring a bell? Shaun White.
Rings a bell.
Yeah, he's the not a skier. He is a snowboarder and does the half pipe. You know, the thing like this. And apparently, I heard earlier he made it to the finals. So he's a beast. I mean, he won gold last time. He won gold the time before that. And so hopefully, this is his last Olympics, he said. And so hopefully he'll bring the gold home again for the good old US of A. And we'll see. But you've probably seen, if you saw pictures popping up on your thing, the downhill ski jump where they've been doing all these tricks and stuff is in this old steel mill. Just if you get a chance, Google it and look at it. But it's literally this fake slope that they built with a ramp on it in the middle of brown grassy land. Yeah. And there's these massive towers right behind it that look like a nuclear power plant, but they're not. Yeah. Supposedly. But it looks really funny. Heather showed me a picture last night where they zoomed out, and like there's literally one white rectangle where the ramp is, and all around it is just desolate brown, hasn't seen snow ever. And so it's a really random place for them to put that. But so I enjoy the Olympics.
I haven't seen a whole lot of advertisement for it.
Yeah. Do you
I didn't even know what was going on.
We were talking about it last night. Do you remember back in our younger days, Dan and Dave? Does that ring a bell to you? They're, in 92, they had like this whole competition.
Oh, 92? No.
Yeah. Dan and Dave were like these two guys competing, I'm going to say biathlon, decathlon, where they did all these running, this, that, and then they were like super athletes, and they had this whole Reebok commercial where they were supposed to be battling against each other, and they were going to the Olympics, see who really was the best athlete in the world and all this. And they did put all these millions of dollars into this ad. And then one of the dudes didn't even make it to the Olympics. Like, he never qualified. So it was.
But they were really training to go.
Oh, they were definitely really training to go.
Okay.
One made it. The other guy just totally didn't make it. So it was just kind of, it was sad if you were him, I guess. But it was funny because they had this massive push.
I thought it was just like a parody or something.
It wasn't just a fake commercial. No, it was like for real. But I don't think, what else is going on this week? I had COVID last week, so that's why we didn't record.
Yeah.
Actually, I had COVID 2 weeks ago. Wasn't last week, was it? 2 weeks ago.
It was 2 weeks.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago.
So
I just
why
felt
didn't
like
we get together?
crud.
Oh, yeah, you
week.
felt bad.
Still felt bad.
Last week.
Yeah.
Or I got tied up.
It was rough, dude.
No, Wednesday of last week, you were still
bad.
And I didn't get home till like 7 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
It was, well, man, they were
I don't
hammering
know where I got COVID. I blame it on my daughter because she got sick from school, I'm assuming. But, man, that thing, it still has me not feeling 100%. Like, I feel like, I told you before we started, I could just lay down and go to sleep. My chest feels like when I used to be an athlete and used to run and do stuff, I feel like that, and I haven't done that in weeks, months. But
I think it's
I think God
4 or
was,
5 weeks,
Yeah.
probably 5 weeks for me. And I think just last week my sinuses finally cleared up.
Yeah. You know, I just said a couple weeks ago in a sermon that I don't really think about COVID too much. It hasn't really impacted my life. And God was like, oh, really? Here you go. Experience.
We can change that, sir.
It had me feeling really bad for a couple of days, maybe like 4 days, where I just laid on the couch. And I told them in the office yesterday, there were actually a couple of moments where I was sleeping, and I felt like I was drifting off into oblivion. So I had to be like, dude, wake up, or you may never wake up again.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is a weird feeling. I don't know if I ever had a fever or not, but I felt like I did, and just zapped all my energy. So don't play around with COVID. Wear your mask if you're around sick people. And
I kept telling Hayes, like, yeah, another shutdown, huh? I'll shut you down.
Oh, man. So everything around here is going good. The corner is gone. Like,
Yeah,
if you drove by and you
it's
haven't
gone.
been, if you haven't been by here in the last 2 weeks, what used to be on that corner is no longer there.
Speaking of that, buddy Terry, I talked to him last week, and just he comes by here going home from
Yeah.
work.
Mm-hmm.
He said, and we'll just call and talk, 5-10 minutes, whatever it may be. He goes, yeah, he said, I was going by the church over there and saw half the building was tore down. I was like, man, I wonder what Mike's up to. I'm like, so you saw something tore up and thought of me.
Yeah. They have those big fun excavators.
He's
over
like,
there,
well,
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
I said, so you saw something tore up, so you decided to give me a call.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't do it.
I've been getting a lot of texts about those buildings, and some people are saying, like, congratulations. I know y'all are glad that those things are gone and be able to move on into the future and all this stuff. Then other people are uber sad that the schools and stuff that they used to be in are no longer there, and I understand that. So I've been walking I've been straddling the fence, I guess you could say. I'm excited because they're gone.
He
because
said Sunday you just had
we
to hold
gotta
your
move
tongue
on.
sometime.
Yeah, you got to move on, and I didn't want to have to sell the buildings either. I think it would be cool to have a chapel that's been there for almost 200 years, still in existence, and all that kind of stuff. But it's not, and so what am I going to do? And so I'm just glad that
the church still survives.
That's what I was saying on
It's
Sunday.
just the building is
Just
gone.
like the church is good. I mean, we just can never make a building an idol, and a lot of people. I'm not.
And what I actually got to thinking, now I can't recall them right off the top of my head, but a lot of times when they had church in the Bible,
Yeah.
it said, and greet those who have church in so-and-so's house.
Yeah. Always. Yeah. Even like I think recently we were talking about Priscilla,
Like Chloe's household, I think that's one of them. Chloe's
That's one of them,
household
yeah.
where you have church.
where Priscilla and Aquila were. I mean,
Yeah.
Paul when he ended up in their town, they brought him in, and that's one of the first churches ever was meeting in their
So
home.
they would go down to the beach and pray, and
Mhm.
before Paul got on the boat, and have
Yeah.
church on the beach.
Yeah.
It'd be kind of cool as long as
Like
it
I
wasn't
said on
hot.
Sunday, back years ago when this corner sale first started talking about and all this, me and Pastor Chris used to enjoy, and other staff members used to always say, well, I mean, if we don't ever meet in these buildings again, who cares? We'll meet at one of our houses.
Mhm.
I mean, it may be small, but we'll meet in the garage.
Mhm.
It's just a church. It's a building. We're the church, the people.
Mhm.
And so I think that the good thing that I was encouraged about was there was not really much lamenting and sadness from our church members. It was the old academy people that were
Yeah.
just reliving that. And I get that. I mean, some
No,
of
I
them,
get it too. It
some-
doesn't bother us because we never
I
went
never
there.
had an attachment to the
Yeah.
school and any of those buildings. I mean, the church office was up there for probably 6 months when I got hired here, and then we
Mhm.
moved to where we are now. And so I get it. We were able to save the bell that's rang for 200 years over there when they called people to Sunday schools, what it used to be for. They kept the steeple. So
the
that
copper. I
that's
think
kinda
I was
cool.
telling Terry, I said the construction guys took it upon themselves to take the copper and stuff and then make a monument once they get the parking lot built.
that's right. And they did.
Bricks.
They peeled all the
bell.
copper off and they gave it to us, so it's stored down in the office. And then they took down the actual steeple itself, and they have to keep that because the copper will only fit back on that. It's like perfectly formed for that. So that's kind of cool. We were thinking this week if you remember on the old B building, which used to face Concord Road, there was that massive cross. You never noticed it from the red light. It's probably 20 foot tall and like 15 foot wide. We didn't think about keeping that. I never even go around outside the building, so I never even thought about bringing that up in any of the meetings with the developers and stuff. So we did lose that, but that's the only thing we lost as far as things I wish we would have kept. And so I think we're going to take the bell and put it in some type of display so people can see it. I mean, I think it's a pretty cool thing to keep. It looks really aged and really old, so I'd love to know what year it actually was made and where it was made, but I have no idea how you would even go about doing that. But
there's only so many bell manufacturers.
That's
so
what I was thinking.
You could do some research and find out.
Yeah, somewhere on there's probably some type of number.
It could be.
Something. We kind of looked, but it's so old and not corroded, but it used to be brass, and it's not
called
brass.
patina.
Patina. It's not brass anymore, but it looks pretty cool.
Patina.
So
brass usually don't turn. It's copper that turns a lot. Silver will tarnish. Brass might turn like a really dark.
That's all it did, yeah.
Brown
it is
or
brass,
black.
and it's just turned to dark, almost blackish.
Yeah.
Not as dark as this table, but pretty close.
Yeah.
And you're right, the copper is copper on one side and green on the other side.
Yeah,
that's the patina.
It's called oxidation.
That's oxidation on that. So yeah, that's what that was. But
so you tell me about sports, I'll tell you about the reality.
About what's really going on out there. Yeah.
Or the mechanical world.
Yeah. Other than that, we were talking before we got started about practicing what you preach. It's always a fun thing. We've been talking recently about giving and being content with what God has blessed us with, and then just some things happened this last week where we had to practice what we preach. So that's always a good test from God to see, like, okay, you talk, I guess me with the COVID and other things, but it's like, okay, you're talking it good. Let's see what happens when the rubber meets the road. And
let's see what happens when we squeeze you a little bit.
So think you passed, and so that was a good test.
And I made the comment to Haley Tuesday night. It was like, man, these trials, you got to have them, but man, they sure do suck. But it sure is nice when they're over with.
Yeah, no doubt.
But it's things that they're not irreplaceable. It's just stuff. So,
and the scripture says that these things strengthen your resolve, so that next time you'll be more prepared and know how to respond, and maybe improve on the last time you responded a certain way, and keep rocking and rolling. And God is faithful through all of that stuff. Like I'm so thankful that He is, because normal people, you and I, are not that good. Like, obviously that's a dumb thing to say. We're not as good as God, but we would not be as persistent if someone continued to let us down or respond a certain way. At some point we'd be like, you know what, I'm done with you.
Yep.
I'm so thankful that God never does that.
And also, when it's a new believer and they literally just received salvation, and all of a sudden they get hit with that, well, now they're battling within themselves. I want to respond the way I used to respond, but for some reason I don't want to respond like that. I want to do it a different way, but I'm struggling. They're kind of back and forth, and I think that's really the beginning of a deal breaker for a lot of new converts. Some people stick it out. It's this parable of the sower, but that don't mean they're lost. They can always come back and, okay, well, let's try it again. Thankfully for me, that didn't happen. I done it that one time, and I couldn't wait to get baptized, and then never look back. Yeah,
you're right though. A lot of new believers do experience that first trial right after they found Jesus, and they're like, hold on, I thought that this wasn't going to be this way, and if they could just, honestly, it's like if they could just make it through that first real big trial, whatever, and have that faith, it starts building the momentum that would take you through the next one. But you're right, a lot of a lot of people give up right after that first thing, and they're like, man, my other way of living life, it may have been hard, but it was fine.
It's maybe not as bad as I thought it was.
Right.
It's like, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yes,
that's the thing about God and just people in general, I think, is because you can go through life and not be living according to God's plan step by step. You can believe in God. You can even, somewhat follow him, but still live with different little sins sprinkled here and there in your life. And your life can appear to be okay. And I think that's the trick that the devil plays on you. And you're like, well, I'm okay. I mean, this is still happening.
It's like the further you are away from God, the less Satan is going to mess with you.
Yeah.
But the closer you get to God, now I don't necessarily think so much that the closer you get to God, Satan's going to mess with you more. Well, it's him messing with you more, but it's also the more you read God's word, the more you see how immoral the world is.
Yeah.
And you're trying not to get tangled up in that stuff again. As it said in Hebrews, sin so easily entangles, and it does.
It easily.
Like when we had our 2 or 3 week hiatus over Christmas and the New Year's, we both confessed we started slipping back into it. It doesn't take much.
No, it really doesn't.
So I think it's just the world itself, and then our human nature, and then Satan. So it's tough. And
it's that you don't want to come across to people like, I got it figured out. If you would just do like I'm doing, that's never it.
No.
But you're right. The closer you grow and the more you understand this word, the more you see how messed up just so many things are. And you just like look around going, man, I see you going down that road. I already can see why you think that's okay. Like, I get it. Like, lightning didn't strike you down. But, man, you were totally missing out on the blessings and just the full life you could have if you could just see the other side of it. Now, I get it. I mean, you're maintaining, and you may even be paying your bills, taking care of your family. You're a good person. That's awesome. I mean, all that is good. But there's just so much more that you could have if you would just, dive in on the other side. And that's just a hard thing to it's a hard thing to do and not come across as hypocritical. Because I know there's still I'm not sitting here saying that I'm perfect. There are many things in my life that if I was mic'd up on a golf course, for instance, you wouldn't want to hear me preach on Sunday. Because the other day I didn't say any bad word. Well, that anyone heard. But when me and a church member were playing golf together the other day, I hit a shot and it was absolutely horrible. And I was like, what a loser. And he was like, that's a way to be supportive of yourself. That's a way to build up your self-esteem. But that was like one of the nicer things I said. So we all have our stuff. I just wish that people would give it a chance and really give it a chance, not just kind of put one foot in and one foot out. Like, just dive all the way in, and you will never be let down by what God does in you and through you. I
was talking to my neighbor one time, and this will really throw somebody for a loop. If you're talking to like a non-believer or somebody that's maybe just got converted or whatever the case may be, but they're talking and you've heard it many times. Well, I'm a good person. And this is what I told my neighbors. I was like, there are no good people in heaven. It's like, what? I said, there's no good people in heaven. I said, what do you They didn't know what to say. I was like, there are saved people in heaven. There are people that have believed in Jesus. That's who gets to heaven. Good people don't get to heaven. I said, well, I do good things. He said, your good works aren't enough. I said, there's no good people.
Yeah.
Now, it'll be good when you get there.
Yeah.
But there's no good people.
Yeah. It is just the struggle.
But I was talking along the lines of how you get there. You'll never be good enough. And me and a guy got in a discussion today again. From the conversation we've had a few months ago and today, he's a believer. He believes in God. I don't know how far he is on the other side, but he's talking about, well, I'm good in this and good in that, and I have good morals and stuff. I'm like, well, how do you know your morals are good? Not him, but he was just saying in general, somebody in a conversation. It's like, but that's where you get into the discussion of, what's good and what's bad. Because what's good to me may not be good to Russell.
Mm-hmm.
As in your morals, where do your morals come from, and how do you know it's a good moral unless you have a foundation for that moral?
Mm-hmm.
I said, how do you know it's... Now, your morals to you might be good,
Mm-hmm.
but are they good? I said, that's like how do... In the beginning, he put, the sun in the sky, and he called the sun light day and the darkness night. That's how we get day and night. If he never named it and we didn't know that, what would we call it? How do we know it's light? Well, he said it was light.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we know it's darkness? Because the light's not there. I said, how do you know? How do you know it's good and bad unless you have something to compare it to? It's like, well, I know this is brand new. Well, how do you know? Because that is old.
That's what makes it... I think that's part of why spreading your beliefs like to other people, I guess for me, is what makes it so hard. It's like, how do I walk into a situation where this person is pretty decent? Like, they're a pretty cool guy or woman, whatever, family that I know, and they're doing okay. Like, there's just one thing missing, and how do I just step into what they feel like is this perfect setup?
That's
and
one thing you lack.
Life is going good, and say, you know what? By the way, this, and if they're not willing or open to it, I struggle with how working it into conversations. I guess working it into if you're not seeking, how do I bring it to you? If you're not even looking for it, then how do I bring it? So that's when I get to where a lot of the times I think the gospel is shared the most by just the way you treat and respond to people in situations, by the way you conduct yourself around people.
How you respond.
Yeah.
How you respond.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think even sometimes, like you said the other day.
Wow, that ball didn't go. Where's that ball going?
I'm much better when people are looking, okay, when that happens. Listen, when I get to heaven and God says, do you remember on that par 3 and you hit 4 in a row in the water and you said this?
Nope.
I'm just going to be like, God, I mean, seriously, you understand, right? And he'll give me a wink and a nod and tell me I should have.
Because it does say it's not like he can't relate to man.
Yeah.
So I guess you have a point.
Can't imagine God on a golf
You know what
course.
I'd say? I was like, no, I don't remember
that. So this is part of the journey, though. How do you work it into your life? How do you work it to where people want to hear it? And then sometimes it's super easy. Like they've reached the point.
Just flows a lot.
Yeah. And it just connects with someone, and then they're like, oh yeah, I get that. Like, I definitely want that in my life, and it happens. But it's just it's a journey to get to that point, which brings us to Lazarus. That's where we're at tonight, the death of Lazarus, because really that's what it's all about. This story of Lazarus is the story of going from I feel like my life is okay and everything is fine to I'm missing something, and here it is, from going from death to life.
You know, one thing I thought about when I started reading this, it says Lazarus dies at Bethany, which a lot of people know or have heard of the story. Mm-hmm. But see, in the Old Testament, there was a story called the rich man and Lazarus. It's like, man, Lazarus got a bad rap. He got the short end of the stick in the Bible.
What an interesting name. I mean, that's
Lazarus.
a name. You only see it like this couple of times in the Bible, and then
I know 2 for sure.
Then I've never heard it in my life ever. Must be because it's the region that they were in. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's people in that region to this day that are named Lazarus, but
yeah, and you have all these wild names, and all of a sudden you got John.
Yeah.
It's like, what? Yeah. What happened to you?
Right. Right. What version do you have? You got your study Bible. I printed out the Message. I don't want to read it all, but I do want to just jump around to a couple of different spots. So
mine kind of breaks it down from 1 to 16.
1 to 16.
If you wanted to run that far.
So this is what the scripture says in the Message.
We're in John 11, by the way.
John 11. The death of Lazarus. It says a man was sick. This is the Message, so it's going to be written a little different, but it's pretty close. Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. It says this was the same Mary who massaged the Lord's feet with aromatic oils and then wiped them with her hair. It was her brother Lazarus who was sick. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, Master, the one you love so very much is sick. It says when Jesus got that message, he says, this sickness is not fatal. And then in my other version here, it says this sickness will not end in death.
Mm-hmm.
It will become an occasion to show God's glory by glorifying his Son. It says Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus, but oddly, when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed on to where he was for 2 more days. And after the 2 days, he said to the disciples, let's go back to Judea. So, I mean, I just wrote out to the side, there's always going to be, in our faith, times where we're going to be tested to wait on God's timing. I think this was like one of those times.
And this is one time that Jesus didn't get up and take off.
Mm-hmm.
Said he stayed there 2 more days.
Yeah. And then later on it says that they got there. He's been in the tomb for 4 days.
4. Well.
And so it took him 2 days. He just chilled where he was. 2 more days to travel there.
I don't think it was actually 2 days, but it was probably about half a day. Because I think it was roughly 2 miles or so.
Yeah, but did he get there and then just hang out for another day before he went to the tomb?
Well, no, he probably wouldn't, because from what I read, Lazarus probably died from the time the messenger left to get to Jesus.
Yeah, okay, so all that.
Yeah, all that time, okay. He was probably, they're assuming he's dead.
That's about a day, half a day.
Yeah, and Jesus is hanging out. It's like, hey, your buddy's dead. Or, yeah, because it says, hey, he's dead. No, it says, Lord, the one you love is sick.
Sick, yeah.
And he's like, well, okay.
He'll be all right.
He'll be all right.
So,
and then it says, when Jesus heard it, now I'm in verse 4, he said, the sickness will not end in death, but the glory is for the glory of God, so that the Son of Man may be glorified. Let's see. Oh, and here in 6. So when he heard that he was sick, he stayed 2 more days in the place where he was.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 3, and then probably a day to walk to Bethany.
To get there.
Yeah.
So Jesus hears about this and then chills out for 2 days, and then he says, let's go back to Judea. And it says in verse 8, they said, Rabbi, we can't do that. The Jews are about to kill you, and you're going back. Jesus replied, are there not 12 hours? You got to help me understand this part, Mike.
No.
It says, are there not 12 hours
This is what I call a holy curveball. It's like, what are you talking about?
I know.
It's like, we're here, and all of a sudden you go that way.
Yeah, because I was tracking the whole, you got to wait on God. I get the analogy there, and Jesus wasn't in a hurry and all this stuff.
See, I've got a good book right here.
It says, Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours of daylight? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble, for they see by the world's light. It is when a person walks at night that they may stumble, for they have no light. And obviously he's talking about walking in the light of Jesus and walking in the darkness of sin, but, you know, it's just an interesting little thing he threw in there.
So I'm just going to read a paragraph out of the book here. Now this is, if you guys want to get it, it's called The Gospel of John, written by Elmer Towns, which is a dean of Liberty University. Dean, teacher, and professor. It says, Jesus reminded his disciples there were 12 hours of light in a day. Dawn was probably breaking when Jesus said these words and realized a full day's journey. So it was a full day's journey. I thought it was like 2 or 3 miles.
It does say that it's about that far away, but...
Yeah, but depending on the terrain, because it was on the others, about 2 or 3 miles from Jerusalem. But walking 2 or 3 miles in that terrain...
It wasn't flat ground.
Yeah.
That's right.
A full day's journey would take them to Bethany. He was suggesting they travel during the safer daylight hours. Also, this proverb has a spiritual application to Christians who are to, in quotations, walk in the light as Christ is in the light. It's 1 John 1:7. As the sun is the light of the world during the 12 hours of daylight, Jesus is the light of the world for every hour of our lives.
Yeah, so he's just reminding them.
Yeah. But still, I mean, it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it was just a random way to throw it in there. You walk in the light, says you don't stumble. There's plenty of light from the sun.
Are you done reading? Because I got
go ahead.
2 things. I got 2 trivia questions.
Oh.
2 of them. So if we go back to verse 3, what is it? No, 2, I'm sorry. I wrote my number down wrong on my note. Mary was the one who anointed the Lord with fragrant oil and wiped his feet with her hair, and it was her brother Lazarus who was sick. What chapter did Mary do that?
Oh my goodness.
I will give you a hint. It's not before 11.
I was going to say it's after this.
It's in 12:3.
Oh, so it's right after this. That's interesting.
So, and I put on my note, and I've noticed this in 2 other places in the book of John when we were going through it. He flashes back. So, because remember, John is writing this, I think in the year. Now, I've been doing a lot of reading.
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of reading, so I want to say about 60 or 70. Yeah, the most plausible date of this writing is between 70 and 100. So he's up in age now, so he may just forgot. But see, if you go to chapter 12, verse 3.
I'm reading it, yeah.
What does it say?
It says, 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus raised from the dead. So he'd already raised him from the dead. Here a dinner was given in Jesus' honor, and Martha served while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. Then Mary took out a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair.
But we're in chapter 11.
Yeah, where Lazarus is just dying. And he says, this is the one who used her perfume and wiped down his feet. Yeah,
I didn't look it up, but there was another one somewhere up in the early chapters of John, where it says,
so is he
when Jesus was flipping over the tables, it says, then they remembered him saying, zeal for your house will consume me. Well, that hadn't happened yet.
So is he foreshadowing? That's the word when you say what's going to happen in the future?
Yeah, he may be foreshadowing. But it says, now she was the one that done it, but she hadn't done it yet. The chapter later, Mary anointed his feet with oil.
Wow. That's really cool.
Just a little trivia thing.
I like that.
And then the second thing I didn't think about until I read it in the book, it says when Jesus heard he was sick, Lazarus was dead, it's like, why didn't he just heal him from a distance like he did the official son?
Well, he speaks to that in here, though, right? He says, like, I'm glad I wasn't there.
I mean, you're right, but...
Yeah. Well, that's true. I mean, he could have done it.
Yeah.
It's like the same thing. He could have got himself off the cross.
Yeah.
He could have just saved himself and been like, you know what? No.
Let's say one time he did do it, and this time he's not. Now, I know why he's not here.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
But it was just a question.
That's an interesting point, too.
Like that quote. I don't know if I sent you that quote that I read. But it says Jesus didn't do everything, but he did everything God asked him to do. He didn't heal everyone. He didn't feed all the hungry people. He didn't make all the blind see. He didn't make all the mute.
He just did exactly what his father told him to do.
He done exactly what God wanted him to do. But yet he didn't do everything we thought he should. But he did everything God asked him to do.
Yeah. It's like it's back to that thing like my friend's sick and I'm going to wait here 2 days. I could heal him.
The one I love.
Yeah, not just my friend. It's like I really care for.
He's
this guy.
sick, but what made him think that the sickness was fatal?
Yeah, because right away they're like.
I mean, you
out.
were sick.
Yeah.
We didn't come running over to you.
Yeah. You did text me, though, so I really appreciate that. A lot of people did. But you're right. Like, no one came to me. They're like...
He's like, hey, he's sick. Okay. All
right. God's got him.
What do you want me to do about it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Jesus was always teaching, right? It didn't matter what the situation was. He's constantly just teaching and trying to
and he's Jesus, and we only know what's in the book and what he talks to us about. But, I mean, in reality, you can ask these questions. It's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jesus tells him, you walk in the light, you don't stumble as much as if you walk in the darkness. That's basically what he said. And he said these things and then announced, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep. I'm going to go wake him up. I like the way, I don't know what's this other one say, because that was he says, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, and I'm going to go there and wake him up. Yeah, so it's basically the same translation. Now, Jesus is talking about an eternal sleep, but his followers are just still so simple-minded that they're like his disciples.
A biblical term, another term for sleep is not really, in biblical terms, spiritual terms, you're not dead. Because in spiritual world, you're never going to die. So when, depending on the context and what they were saying, like here it says he has fallen asleep. Well, he's just died of physical death, but they call it sleeping. Paul uses it a lot. Says our brother who has fallen asleep in the spirit.
Yeah, and Jesus explains that to him here. He said, Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better. And Jesus has been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought that he meant natural sleep. So then he told them plainly, listen, fools, Lazarus is dead. I mean, like...
See what I'm saying? It's okay.
Lazarus is dead. What are y'all talking about? And for your sake, Jesus said, I'm glad I was not there so that you may believe, but let us go to him. So, I mean, he's saying, if I would have been there, and my friend that I love was going to die, yeah, I could have saved him, but would that have had as big of impact as what I'm about to do? Like,
yeah, and something else that said, apparently if you sleep, which even today, if your body rests, that's a way of its healing itself.
Yeah.
So that's probably what, and I thought Peter said that. The disciples, Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he'll get well. 13, Jesus, however, was speaking about his death. And what gets me is he didn't say a parable, 12 hours. Hey, if you go back there, they're going to stone you. Well, there's 12 hours in a day. It's like, what are you talking about? So he uses it like a parable, and then he's like, well, he went to sleep. Well, if he went to sleep, he'll get well because he's sick. He's dead.
Yeah.
So sometimes Jesus, he was just straightforward, but most of the time he did a story or a parable. Right here he says, hey, Lazarus is dead, okay?
Yeah, you guys aren't understanding what I'm saying. He's asleep. This man is dead. And Jesus said, I'm glad I wasn't there. I'm glad, it says in the message, I'm glad for your sake that I wasn't there. You're about to be given new grounds for believing. Now let's go to him. And I think this is funny in verse 16 or interesting or just... It says, then Thomas said to the rest of the disciples, let us also go that we may die with him. I mean, in this moment, Thomas is ready to go and take the chance that when they get to Judea, they all may die. And then when Jesus comes back, Thomas is the one that's like, no, you got to show me a sign. Like, I don't even know if I believe. Yeah. But in here, he was ready to die for him.
Yeah, and I read about that because I really it didn't click with me. It says, then Thomas, called twin, he was also called Didymus, so he had 3 names, said to his fellow disciples, let's go so that we may die with him. I was trying to look it up while you were reading here. I don't remember if it was there, but there could have just been speculation about exactly what that meant. But I think what they come up with is they believe that, hey, if he's gonna go and raise Lazarus from the dead, if we die, he can raise us too.
Oh, so there was, possibly. Yeah. But I mean, do you think in this moment, because he never has said, let's go there, I'm about to raise him from the dead.
Yeah, because see here, Elmer Towns didn't even put 16 in there. Yeah. But and see, my study Bible just talks about his name, but it was Thomas /twin /Didymus.
Yeah, one of those things where Jesus probably gave him all these names on the way he was changing him. It says when Jesus finally got there in verse 17, on his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany here's where it says, now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. And when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had just been here, my brother would not have died, but I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. And Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. And Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. And Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? That's kind of what you were saying earlier. Even if you know Jesus, even if you do fall into that eternal sleep, technically you're not dying. Yeah, and that's what Jesus was trying
physically. Your body's dead. But it also says the body's the temple, and what dwells in it is what's going to live.
And it showed, I mean, she understood Jesus and what he was all about, because she said, yeah, I know that he's going to rise in the resurrection on the last day. She's like, I get it. Yeah, when you come back, he's going to rise and live. And Jesus was like, no.
Now she said in 24, well, I'm going to back up. Let me read here. Let's see. In 22, yet even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you.
Yeah.
Your brother will rise again. And Martha said, I know that. I know he will. He will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. She didn't know what the resurrection was. That's just what she was taught. Who's the resurrection?
And they've only been talking about this for a short period of time.
Yeah, and then 25, Jesus said, and I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to point out something. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me, even if he dies a physical death, will live. Everyone who lives and believes in me will never die, ever. Do you believe this? And one thing I want to point out in that is when Jesus started to explain it, he said, I am. I was like, so right there, he used God's name. Because if we go back to Exodus 3:14, and when Moses said,
who do I tell him sent me?
Who do I tell him sent me if you want me to go back to this? I don't want to go back there. but if they ask, who am I going to tell them? Tell them I am sent you. It's like, what kind of name is that? Is that a letter in two?
Yeah.
You know, is that two or is it one? It said I am. So anytime, now in my Bible it's not capitalized, but I am, and that's God's name. Now I put Jesus uses God's name. That's like if your son went somewhere, it's like, well, who are you? Well, I'm Russell. So it's kind of but here he's making himself equal with God.
Which they didn't like.
No, it's like, you're calling God your father, so y'all are equals? But he uses God's name.
Yeah, so Martha understood this. She's like, I know he's going to rise again. And Jesus straightens her out and said, do you believe this? And she said, yes, Lord, in 27. Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. It says after she said this, she went back and got Mary and said, hey, the teacher's here and he's asking for you. It says when Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. And now Jesus hadn't even entered the village yet, because Martha went out and met him before he got there. It says when the Jews had been with Mary in the house comforting her, they noticed how quickly she got up and went out, and they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. That when Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And when Jesus saw her weeping, the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. And it says Jesus wept for his friend. And then the Jews said, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind have kept this man from dying?
Maybe.
If he wanted to, or if God told him to, right? Says Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb, and it was a cave with a stone laid over the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there 4 days. And Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So they took away the stone, and then Jesus looked up and said, I like, this is the part I was getting to, because right back here where she said, I know that God will give you whatever you ask. She told him in verse 22, and Jesus does it here. Basically, playing on that, he says, Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people.
These folks here.
I verbally said it. I know I could have just had a thought, and God, you would have heard me and done whatever I asked. But just so these people can see what's going on, I said it out loud.
This was probably the second greatest miracle he did. was raising a dead man. Probably the greatest miracle he did was him dying and then coming back.
He says, but I said this for the benefit of these people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. Just when he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. And the dead man came out. His hands and feet were wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. And Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go.
Do you think he would, like, when he come out, he was mumbling? Will y'all get this off me? I can't breathe.
Yeah.
I'm going to die.
I wonder, did he remember being sick? And then all of a sudden, he's walking out of a tomb with, like, what was his, I don't know what his thoughts were right now. That'd be interesting to know. Mm-hmm. Because I remember being sick, and then I remember walking out all wrapped up. I mean, you would live with some mental trauma the rest of your life, wouldn't you, if that happened to you? I don't know.
Probably be a professional drinker. It's like, man, you haven't seen the things I've seen.
Yeah, no doubt.
Something else I pointed out, and this was actually an old note, but back to verse 27, it says, yes, Lord, she told him, I believe you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who comes into the world. And something just to back it up, because sometimes, if I can, I like to back it up. If you go back to 1:14, says the Word became flesh and took up residence among us. We observed his glory, the glory as the one and only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. And then hop over to 1:27 or 23. Says, he said, I am a voice of the one crying out in the wilderness, make straight the way for the Lord. Mm-hmm. So just two more verses to back up that Jesus was the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
And then verse 37, this is basically where I stopped with my notes. It says, but some of them said, couldn't he who opened the blind man's eyes also kept this man from dying? It's like, well, I'm pretty sure he could, you know. Then I was going to hop over here to 2:25. Said, and because he did not need anyone to testify about man, for he himself knew what was in man. And that can kind of go along with Jesus wept. And there's been a lot of speculation about verse 35. He could have wept because he saw the damage of sin, mainly because we have to die a physical death now because of sin. So he saw the sorrow of his sisters, Mary and Martha. The people crying with her, he probably wasn't too concerned about them because some of them were paid to do it. That's what they did. And then in 36, it says, see how he loved him. In 37, but some of them said he could make a blind man see, but he couldn't save this dude from dying. Mm-hmm. So it's just a lot of speculation. Elmer Towns has, I think it was 6. The deep hurting and sorrow of Mary. The callousness of the Jews. The ignorance of his followers concerning his power. The unbelief of a few of the Jews. The indecision of some who professed faith in him. Or his love for Lazarus. It could have been. It doesn't specify.
Any and probably all of those things, yeah.
And then what really got me is probably the callousness of their heart. Because some of them, hey, he could open a blind man's eyes, but he couldn't keep his man from dying. And that's how I went back to 2:25. He said Jesus didn't trust in no man because he knew our heart. Mm-hmm. And then that led me to 1 Samuel 16:7. It's a pretty famous passage. Said don't look at his appearance or stature. Said man looks at this. He said I look at the heart. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I got to stop right there. It's just going to snowball. But that's how the Bible, you can show people it's all tied together. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It doesn't separate it.
And we can take this story from obviously thousands of years ago, whether Jesus foreshadowing or jumping back and forth and all these things happen, and we can relate it to our life because every one of us have someone in our life that is on the verge of dying, that's sick. And the parable, or I guess the the illusion, the illustration you would use is sin, is the sickness that is out there, and someone we know.
And this could also be related to a spiritual death.
Of course, yeah.
And Jesus can come and resurrect us and bring us to life, because he said he is life.
Yeah.
He's life. He is the embodiment of life in truth.
So we all have these people in our life, and some of us still have that sin lingering in our life to where death is right there, the spiritual death, and people are crying out on our behalf. Do we have the patience to wait? I mean, Jesus could immediately snap his fingers and there's no more sin. We can, if he wanted to, but it's like he wants you to have the faith and the trust that he is the one. You follow him and do as he instructs you to do. So we all have those people in our life, like Mary and Martha had, that Jesus loves and cares for, and he wants to a little bit test us to see where our faith lies. Are we going to trust his plan and his timing and all these things? And then there's those of us that God has brought us from death to life, where our life was on a certain trajectory where we were going down, that if we weren't born again or saved, like you said from the get-go, there's no good people in heaven, there's all saved people in heaven. Our lives would have never made it to the point where we even got to experience that if he wouldn't have saved us. And so we can take this story, and it very much relates to us, because Jesus is still in the business of saving, of taking people from death to life.
Regardless how advanced humanity has gotten, Jesus is the same. Like you said, he's the same guy.
And he's just looking for a few people to have the faith and
nailed
trust.
it. It's all about faith. Because we've gotten in the discussion in class, and you may have gotten into conversations. Do you have any idea why we have no pictures of Jesus? Any pictures?
I would just say, first answer that comes to my head is, so we have to have faith that this book is true.
And
Like,
we wouldn't
the
worship a picture.
Yeah. I mean, that picture.
So
what
there's
do they
no.
get that picture of that you always see of.
They just kind
The
of
white guy with the flowing hair and
took the people of the time where they're at.
It was like a crime scene detective where someone describes what they look like and they start drawing it out.
But so we won't worship an image like his cross or the spear or like the Holy. How does a cup get called the Holy Grail? I've never understood that.
Indiana Jones, man, he was risking his life for it. So.
Man, well, I wonder what school he went to. They wouldn't even let me in the door.
Yeah.
But like supposedly a cup that called his blood, or the cup from the Last Supper, or the spear. You know what? Why don't we have these things? Or the ark, as huge as that thing was, they claim they have found it. I don't know how many years, but they may have. I don't know. So we won't worship an image relating to this, you know, because it says those who believe in God must believe he exists. Am I saying that right? To please, those have to have faith that God exists to please God. It's something like that. I can't remember it word for word, but it's all about faith. Is all it is.
Yeah.
And without faith, you can't please God.
And it's so hard to get someone to understand that, because we're in obviously even from this time, people were living in the time where they had to see it to believe it. Is why Jesus did these miracles and these things.
He probably had to do them here.
Yeah.
Mainly God was doing them, but he was doing it through Jesus.
Of course, yeah.
And that's probably why back here in 4, it says, when Jesus heard it, he said, the sickness will not end in death, but is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. He was just the conduit for God's power.
Right. And so, similar to what we are. We're the conduit for God's power, not on the level Jesus was. I mean, he's obviously leveled up to a whole nother level.
Because if we could do this, we wouldn't have to work no more.
Right. Right. But our lives all have faith stories where miracles have happened, whether they're something, just the fact that we're saved from sin and have the option and the opportunity to be in heaven for eternity is a miracle in itself. And those stories of how that happens in our life and how we live that out are what Jesus wants us to use to be able to evangelize, to be able to spread our faith around the world, and even in our own neighborhoods. Take it from the world just to your one street you live on. He gives you opportunities to speak those things into people's lives, and so we have to be ready. The scripture says, always be ready, like be willing to give your testimony and your witness, like be ready to tell someone when they're ready to hear it.
To give them the hope that you have.
That's right, because they want to hear, okay, this Jesus that you know and trust and have faith in, what'd he do for you? Like, why would I believe that? And man, when we start telling them stories where you and I came from and now where we are and the things he's allowing us to do, hopefully that encourages people and pushes them towards the cross. That's the goal of it all. So Jesus is the only one that can bring someone from death to life, and the story of Lazarus is one of those places, like Mike said, probably the second coolest thing that Jesus was a part of. Well, I would say third. I think the first coolest thing was just creation. Like, he was a part of that. So he created everything, him and God.
Well, okay, well, let's get specific. Why he was here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, pretty cool things Jesus does. So, I think that's all I got for tonight. Jesus brings you from death to life. You got to have faith that he's the only one that can do it. I just
kept rolling. I was like, I got to stop.
Yeah. Keep going. I mean, you highlighted almost everything in your Bible over there. So.
Oh, I highlight everything I read.
Oh, just to go back and show that I've read the whole thing.
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah.
I like that.
And so when I do willingly mess up, it's like, well, I'm without excuse. Why? Because I've read the Bible.
I've already read that. We appreciate you guys for listening to us again tonight. So please like, share, subscribe, all those cool things. Share with your friends. Introduce them to the podcast. Introduce them to Mount Zion Baptist Church. Invite them to your church, whatever. We don't care where they go to worship. We just want people to know that Jesus is the resurrection and the life. Scripture says that no man comes to the Father but through him. I mean, so we're blessed to have experienced that and lived that out in our lives. And so we try to share it.
Next Wednesday.
Oh, yeah, back to Bible study in person for the first time in a long time. So if you want to join us here at 6:30, Mike and I will start recording on Tuesdays so that we can keep this podcast going.
As long as we're not sick.
As long as no one catches COVID between now and then. But we appreciate you guys. Like I said, like and subscribe. But more importantly than that, continue to love Jesus, continue to share Jesus, continue to live out your faith in front of people so that they can practice the same faith that you and I have experienced. God bless, and you guys have a good evening.